Okay. So I just want to get lives drawing on screen on the top left here, based on how many lives I have remaining. What I asked you guys to do was to put that behavior here inside the game draw function. And I'm just going to start off with just drawing rectangles. And literally, I'm just going to draw one rectangle for now. Maybe 130, 50 and 30. And I just want to make sure I can draw this, so I'm just going to draw this live shape. I'm literally just starting with a 1. And like, if you guys are ever lost with like where to start, just start with something really simple. Like, I just want to draw one rectangle, and then build from there. Like, you get confidence from getting something working, as opposed to trying to struggle with something. This is literally just me drawing a rectangle here. That's it. That's all I want to do. And so, if I want to, I can change the position of this guy. So I can be like, hey, I want to position him 130. So he's a little bit lower. Okay, so I'm just going to move him over to the right and lower him a little bit. Okay, so there's my little ship rectangle. And I want to draw this for 3, I want to draw 3 of these, right? So I know I'm going to write a loop that goes over 3 times. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to write that loop, and I'm going to run this. And it all looks the same because they're all drawing on top of one another. So I want to move these over by 100 pixels every time I go through the loop. Now, if you remember, this variable here is a great candidate for that, because I can just take this variable and multiply it by this value, and that'll give me a number that gets bigger every time through the loop. So now I have 3 rectangles that are all separated by one another, right? Just by going through the loop and multiplying it by 100. I can also offset them a little bit so they're not on the edge by adding a number in front of this. So they're all 100 pixels off from the left plus 100 times whatever the loop variable is. So that moves. Okay. So this is me drawing my rectangle shapes. And why don't I just get this working with blowing my ship up too. So here's my ship. I'm going to run into something, and my rectangles don't update. That's because I'm always going 3 times through this loop. But I just so happen to already have a variable that shows me how many lives I have. If I change this from 3 to be m lives remaining, this is a member variable that lives inside the game class. Now it'll only loop over however many ships I have left.
I don't know why I was trying to use an if statement instead of for statement.
So now when I die, I lose a ship. And I lose a rectangle in turn. There's another one. I have 1 life remaining. I just blew up again. There's my last one. And now I die, and the game is over. Okay. Now if I want these to use a texture instead, I can just create a texture here. I can do ship texture, load from file, and I know that this is the path to my ship that I want. I can pass in the path to the ship, create a sprite, and then it's the same exact thing, except instead of a rectangle now, I'm setting a texture. So I load a texture, and then I assign the texture to the sprite, and instead of this, I'm going to say ship sprite set position and just replace this with a ship sprite. So I get to use the same code, looks exactly the same, only now instead of drawing a rectangle, I just swapped it out with a texture. And this is because I already know I got it working with a rectangle, and so now I know when I blow it up, it loses a ship. And you could do things like you can scale it down, and you can also change the color of it if you want. They're smaller now. I can make them spread out a little less. And if I want to, I can also set the color. So if I want to, I can create a color variable called ship color. And I can set the ship color to be equal to white by default, and just change the opacity a little bit by changing the alpha value here. And then I can take the sprite and I can set the color of the sprite. And by doing this, by changing the alpha, I can make it a little bit more transparent too. So now you can see they're slightly more transparent. Alright. Finally, what I want to do is, I have this game over behavior, and what I want to do is, I want to set it to be game over if you run out of lives. It's actually very simple because down here, I already know when I've run out of lives. When I go to respawn the player, if I don't have any lives left, I have this condition here. I can add an else to it to say, hey, otherwise, this means that I've run out of all my lives, so I can just do a game over here. And this game over is the exact same game over we were doing originally from last week, which is to draw the game over text. And I have one more life after this. This is my last life, and if I blow up here, now it says game over. Okay? And that's really all it takes, because we already had all that behavior from before. We just put an else condition here when we go to respawn the player. This is kind of the power of having functions. I know that this function gets called every time I try to respawn the player, no matter what. And it's not always going to succeed here. And so in this case, I'm just going to do a game over. All right. Okay. Let me put this up on Zool now too. And I want to go over the lab, the next lab with you. So if you copy down this week 8 lab folder again, if you're behind, you can just copy it and then it'll you can get caught up. Okay, so the next one is going to be the invulnerable period. So what I want you guys to do is make it so that the ship is invulnerable for 3 seconds after they spawn, which means you're unable to be destroyed by asteroids even after they spawn. This is the key to making it feel like it's more fair, because right now the asteroid can blow up the player immediately. And I want you to stop the player from being able to shoot while they're invulnerable, because it isn't really fair to give your player like a period of time when they can fire. So don't worry about the blinking part. I'm going to show you guys how to do that. Unless you guys are done with it early, in which case you can try to do it yourself. But the idea is that I blow up my ship, I respawn, and during this time when I'm blinking, I can't be hit by asteroids. This is to prevent the case where I accidentally run into one. As soon as I'm not invulnerable, I can blow up again. Okay? This is the last lab I want you guys to do, and then I'll show you guys how to do the blinking part. If you're otherwise done sooner, you can try to do this yourself. And then the last lab here, which I added, is I want you guys to add sound effects and music on top of all these events that happen when you're shooting and dying and blowing up asteroids. All right? All right, so let's do this. Take some time to do this invulnerable spot. Basically, for 3 seconds after the player is created, I want you to ignore all collisions with asteroids. All right? My recommendation is to put a member variable inside the player that controls how much time they are invulnerable for. That's what I would suggest.